Welcome, guys, back to the Grateful Living podcast. Today, I'm thankful to have Joe Taveras with me today. Joe is an American roboticist, designer, and artist who spent the majority of his career selling robots around the world. In March of 2020, he migrated to a new medium, painting. Having had no formal training, he used his time in quarantine to engage in rapid experimentation with an array of styles and mediums in order to truthfully convey his vision, and he consistently aims to push the boundaries of innovation with his art, exploring new techniques that reflect his inner and outer environment, questioning our collective future, social norms, and our interminable integration with technology. His paintings are in public and private collections in New York, Los Angeles, Miami, the Middle East, Ghana, Vietnam, China, Canada, Boston, Seattle, and many others. Joe, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Grateful to be a part of this.
Of course, thankful to have you on. So for those of us that don't know you, kind of set the scene for where you grew up, your family situation, and what type of kid you were.
Absolutely. Well, I was definitely a different type of kid, I'd say. While a lot of my friends were out playing sports and playing in the backyards and whatnot, I was definitely, always curious, just locked in the basement, working on new invention ideas or playing saxophone or guitar, piano, um, or just doing ridiculous things like dissecting frogs at age 11 just because I was curious as to what was inside. And I feel like that way of thinking definitely has built my mind, and it's only grown since then. But I was born in New Jersey, in the town of Morristown, and then when I was 7, I moved to Southborough, which is a city outside of Boston. And then I lived in Boston for a little bit, and then for high school, I moved to Los Angeles, which was absolutely formative. And then from there, back to Boston to attend Boston College, which I graduated from in 2018. And then, one second, let me just mute this. And
Yeah,
then
no worries.
from there, after graduating from college, I spent some time kind of hopping around, just living on couches and whatnot, working on this startup idea that I was building with my friends at BC. But then in the fall after college, I moved to New York City to work at the robotics company. And then from there, eventually was quarantined in LA, but then moved back to Boston. So just really just moved around a lot. And for me, I think that that's definitely still something that I find myself doing.
Yeah. Obviously, Southborough, Massachusetts, and Burbank, California are two different places, culturally and things like that. I'm curious, for you, how was that adjustment period, making new friends, like all that culture, no winter, no snow in California.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, I think I was probably still too young or not fully aware enough um, to actively think, okay, I'm moving to a new place. Now it's time to go start new, meet new people, start new hobbies. It just kind of was a continuation of the stuff that I was doing prior to that. Um, but inactively, my environment was changing completely, from the city I lived in, but also to the direct apartment that I was in, and that I think was super formative. And I slowly got to starting to meet people just by meeting them through shared interest in music. At the time I was still playing a lot of guitar and really into bands like Guns N' Roses, and I met some other people who were as well, and then we were playing music together, and then it kind of scattered from there. But yeah, I don't know, I didn't really think too much about the change, but in hindsight, like you said, that's a crazy difference in terms of culture, um, you know, and just being exposed to such a wide variety of just diversity of thought in Los Angeles. Um, I think it did a lot more subconsciously than I definitely was aware of at the time.
Yeah. I'm curious, especially given what you're doing now. Obviously, I read in the intro that it wasn't until March of 2020 that you started painting. But I'm
Mhm.
curious, were you interested in art as a young kid? Or if not, when did sort of that passion come?
Yeah, so I wasn't interested in visual art or painting at all as a kid or drawing even. Um, and my dad's told me that he still has some drawings from when I was a kid, but it was nothing, um, you know, intentional. And when I remember back to those times, when I see some of those drawings that I did, I can feel my frustration of uh, not, just like not doing what I wanted to do with it, because I had this vision of what art was, and I immediately would think of Leonardo da Vinci and Mona Lisa. So I would try to draw things that looked realistic, and it just wasn't happening even close. Um, so I just would give up very quickly, and just move on to the next thing, which I did, um, with a lot of different things. But I was definitely into music a lot. I was always trying to grab new instruments just wherever I could find them, even if they were like $30 flute that I found online somewhere, and just trying it out, just as a means of, uh, I don't know, maybe like in hindsight, it was probably as a means of expression, but at the time I was just doing it because it was fun.
Yeah.
It was just a way to have fun. Uh, but it wasn't until, um, I believe, March of 2019 that it was crazy month. I For work, while working at the robotics company Temi, I had to go to in the span of a month. I had to go to Tokyo, LA, Park City, Utah, Melbourne, Australia.
Okay.
I think that's it. But it was just like
Yeah,
this,
that's a lot.
and I've never been to Asia before that, never been to Australia before that, and it was just extreme expansion in such a short period of time. And around the same time, I had uh, first heard about Jean-Michel Basquiat, the artist, um, and there was just something about his work that really stuck out to me, and felt a lot more accessible to, how my brain, thought and functioned and ideated. So at the time, I believe um, I think I went to Michael's, the art store, and just bought like 5 small canvases. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I just needed to express. So I painted a couple things, but it was really intense. So I ended up, just giving all my materials away, to this friend that I had formed. He I'm not sure where he lived, but he spent a lot of time outside the Starbucks in Manhattan. I believe he was living on the streets at the time, and he was an artist. And um, I just thought that he probably would find more use of the materials than I at the time, just because, like I said, it was intense, and I needed to devote more of my, creative energy to my work. So I just gifted him those, um, and then I just didn't paint for a year, barely drew anything. But then like I said, it was like March, and pandemic hadn't really settled in America yet. And um, I had just left the Temi company, because they had moved their headquarters to Shenzhen in China. Um, and my mom had gifted me this paint by numbers, of a it was a small paint by numbers of a Buddha head. And it was my first day to just do whatever I wanted, after, leaving the company. And I ended up spending, probably like from 13 to 15 hours just working on this paint by numbers, just locked in for 13 hours, and experienced, like an ego death of sorts. And at the end of it, I was just looking at this painting, and I was like, wow, it's nice, but there's probably like a million of these because it's paint by number. And as I was holding it, right in front of me, there was this lamp. And for some reason, I felt compelled to put the painting on the lamp. And the light just shone through the canvas. And um, I could see like the uniqueness of each. And every brushstroke was different, and it was so beautiful, and there was so much detail that was not able to be seen prior to putting it on the lamp. And for some reason, that just that just changed my life. And recently, I learned about the concept of peak experiences, where the psychologist and researcher Maslow um, had this theory of peak experiences, which are these moments of extreme euphoria where the person experiences a loss of sense of time, deep flow state, and these moments can like change a person's life and lead them to feel a compulsion to recreate that experience of painting that paint by numbers. It's painting and just creating art has been complete obsession. And after that, I painted probably like 18 hours a day, every day, which slowed down around the summer because I got a job at this organization called Connected Living that provides technology to senior living communities and hospitals. And Yeah, I mean, but the obsession is it's still a thing, you know. I
Yeah.
since left that job in February, and I spend basically all day creating art. And even like throughout the night, sometimes I'll just wake up and create something. But yeah, it's definitely obsession.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry to keep going having you go back and forth, but you
No,
know, I'm curious, now, especially as a full-time artist, and I think given some of the things you did, right around college and after college, you know, going into BC, was doing something entrepreneurial in your mind, or was that something you developed
mm,
while at BC?
no. So I mean, for most of my childhood, I had like an aspiration to become a general surgeon, and I went to a medically focused high school for that, and volunteered in the hospital every day. Um, and I went into BC as pre med, and I was majoring in psychology. Um, Aspiration for general surgery somehow morphed towards wanting to research schizophrenia. Um, and then this interest in research and psychology and sociology brought me to an internship at the company Tinder, where I was basically researching how people use the app around the world, trying to see, okay, people are using it in this way in India versus here in Japan. Why? And then how can we, change the product to accommodate for that? But during that internship, I would say things like, oh, it's interesting that people are using commercial about this or like a video. I had no idea what I was talking about. But my manager at the time, she suggested that I go talk to the marketing team. And I was like, what's marketing? Never heard of it. And then that eventually just kind of marketing took over my life from there. And um, I think I took one marketing class at BC, but largely it was just psychology. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, nice. And so I guess, you know, that background of doing, things related to marketing, um, I guess how is that has that helped at all with, your art career, or
100%. I mean,
yeah.
it's all marketing, right? Like, I feel like marketing as a concept, it helps bridge the gap between idea and like someone to consume the idea. Um, so in creating paintings, the idea, the painting itself, it inherently has no value beyond itself. But it gains that value through bridging that gap and through communicating the idea of the individual piece, but also the collective um, just ethos of what I'm trying to move towards and into. So yeah, marketing has helped in just being able to make videos and take good pictures, but also being able to run digital advertising, to build my website. And then also just like the sales side of marketing, just being able to communicate potential collectors and galleries and meeting them halfway in a manner that allows them to consume the idea.
Yeah. So, you talked about having the paint by numbers experience in March of 2019.
Mhm.
Um, do you then, for that year, are you just doing it on the side a little here and there, or and then March of 2020 you started, I'm just curious because like everybody obviously would love to make their passion their full-time, work, and you were obviously able to start that in March of 2021. But I'm just curious of what your attitude was. Was it just going to be a hobby? Did you go into it thinking it could be a side gig, or what was your attitude?
So the paint by numbers happened March of 2020, and then um, my mom had called me and she said, you know, Joe, you I was in Brooklyn at the time, and she was in LA. She was like, you know, you don't have a job right now. Why don't you come visit for a week, and we can like figure out what comes next. And I was like, all right, for sure. So I went to LA with like a week's worth of clothes. Um, but then the news surrounding COVID-19 started to change, and 1 week in LA turned into 2 weeks, and 2 weeks turned into just indefinitely. I just canceled my flight back home to Brooklyn, and as soon as I knew I was going to be quarantined in place, I felt compelled to go out and get art material. And it was never an intention to start a hobby. It was never an intention to start a career. Um, I wasn't even thinking about following something that I believe to be purpose. All I could think about was like, who knows what the heck is going on right now? Like, I'm gonna die, you know. Honestly, like I'm
Yeah.
gonna die.
Yeah.
There's craziness happening outside these walls. And you know that statement or that question of like, if you had 1 day to live, like what would you do? Like my answer was painting, because I just like the last day. And it was a delusional fear. And at the time I knew that it was delusional, but it was productive. So I leaned into that. And yeah, just, I just felt like I was not going to make it to tomorrow. And that that really saddened me, because I feel like I have so many ideas that I didn't get to manifest. So I was like, all right, I need to transfer that will last beyond me. And so painting just made sense, especially with that peak experience with the paint by numbers happening so soon prior. And yeah, I was just painting for like 18 hours a day. Just would wake up, cold brew, among other things, and then just dive into just straight to the garage, just painting until like 2 in the morning, and then same thing the next day. And did that until I think it was May. May, I got a text from, or I got like notified from someone I knew about the potential to work at Connected Living. Um, and because they had just brought on the Temi robot as one of their products to bring to senior living communities and hospitals, and they needed someone to manage that product. So I ended up joining the team and became the director of business development and marketing, I believe it was. And yeah, I was just working during the day, on Zoom calls, and selling robots, helping set up robots in senior living communities and hospitals, making applications, and yeah, just developing like programs to integrate them into the operations at these places. and then I would spend like the whole night just painting.
Yeah, yeah.
At the time, my Instagram had like a couple hundred followers, if that, and I was completely anonymous, and I was just like posting whatever I was making, um, and then I eventually through that company got relocated to Boston, and then I was able to get a studio, and I'm sure we can dive into that.
Yeah. I'm curious, one of the interesting things about your story is when I read, having had no formal training, right? And, people go to art school or people, you know, whatever, do art for, since they were 5 years old. Was it, I'm curious why, like, people even nowadays just have a fear of starting something, like, even if it's a hobby, right? They're not even trying to make it a side hustle or a full-time,
Yeah.
it's just like knitting or something like that. People have a fear of starting because they don't, they're like, oh, didn't learn that as a young. How did you not have that fear or self-consciousness of like not having done the traditional way?
I think it's a mixture of things. I think one, failing is so important. So like I intended to fail. Like I knew I wanted to fail daily, hourly. Um, and through those failures, I would learn and grow, you know? Um, and that's not to say that that process does not happen in art school. Um, but the quarantine era was like a time to just be like to just put the blinders up and just solely focus on the vision and solely focus on what was in my mind, with minimal external just stimulus. And um, I think in an art school, I imagine, because I have no idea what art school is like, to be
Yeah.
honest, but I imagine you're in a room with at least one other artist, and that enough is enough to just like divert you, from like honing in on your vision. And that's not to say that there's like that we're 100% original. I don't believe that for a second. Um, but it just, for me, just being able to fail and fail often, in my lane of what I wanted to express was so crucial. Um,
Why were you open to failure? I mean, no, so many people in society, right, aren't. That's why so many people don't do entrepreneurial things, is they're afraid of that. Why were you, well, how did you have that attitude of, I'm ready to work on this skill. I know it's not the best right now, but I'm willing to put in this work.
I think, um, first of all, I believe that I can do anything. I believe like give me some caffeine and time and anything is possible. Like
Yeah.
especially now with the internet. Um, um, but I also just I had prior experiences where, I experienced that that cycle of failure and growth, and a lot of the books that I had read prior, like I think it's Principles by Ray Dalio. It has this diagram of this like upward curve, and then it goes down where you fail, and then it loops back up and it climbs up. So it's like you need that, and you need to like continue to recreate that. Um, and that's just been like a part of, um, my mentality for, I think, the past, I don't know what year is it, like I don't know, maybe like 3 years now, like since I really started entrepreneurship, which was the end of BC. um, because in the past, I like throughout college I probably started like at least 10 businesses, and um, for those, the moment I experienced some kind of pushback from either the market, from the technology I was using, or from someone close to me being like, I don't know if that's a good idea, then like I immediately just like stopped working on it and moved on. Uh, but and then that idea died, right? Um, but the times when I stuck with it and focused on the vision and focused on the iterative process of growth, it had time to grow. But in once again, like in that quarantine era, I had no one telling me this is a bad idea. No one telling me that doesn't look good. No one telling me you can't paint all day. So I just did, and I kept going, and I kept doing.
In a similar vein, and maybe the answer is the same. I'm curious, starting out the Instagram account, at that point, was it, I might sell these on the side? What was your main incentive with starting that?
I remember, I think I woke up one morning in like maybe like January of 2020, and I just had the Instagram handle RoboJoBot. Like I had just made it in some kind of like late night days. I don't even know. Like I just woke up and it was there. I was like, oh, interesting. I didn't think about it. And then a couple months went by, and then that's when I started posting to it. And I don't know if the intention at first was to sell. Um, then I think the thing I thought about more, aside from just like survival and just expression and whatnot, I think I was thinking about like, oh, I wonder if like in the deep future someone's gonna be find this painting under some rubble and be like, oh, this is kind of cool, and keep it put up. And now here I am, like I wonder if this is gonna be on the moon or like in a museum on Mars one day.
Yeah.
That's growth. But uh, I remember after I made, I think about like 10 paintings in quarantine, I put them online up for sale for $2,000 each. And they were small, they were like 16 by 20. Um, and my sister was like, Joe, no one's gonna pay $2,000 for a painting by you. And I was like, all right, maybe. And no one bought them. But if they had, they would have had one of my first pieces ever for like relatively low money compared to like where it's at now, and where it's going to be in the future.
Yeah. And I guess, what was maybe your first win, or what do you consider, like, did you sell a piece online? Did a gallery reach out to, I mean, was there a point, unfortunately, all of us need some sort of external validation of some sort. Did you have a moment like that where you're like, oh, maybe I am onto something based off of someone else's feedback?
I'm trying to think. I think I think it happened in a small way when um, I met this woman. Her name is Katie Southworth. Uh, so we're always like motivating each other, and like I credit her a lot for like everything right now. But she had met me online, and she already had a studio in SOA, in like the artist studio building in the South End here in Boston. And um, she saw I sent her some of my paintings. She was like, "Oh, that's pretty cool. Like, nice." And she was like, "When did you start painting?" And I was like, "Oh, like a couple months ago." And she was like, "Wait, hold up. We're talking right now." She FaceTimed me, and we spent pretty much all night talking about it. And the next morning, I woke up to like 3 emails where she had CC'd me on them, and she was reaching out to people in the studio building saying, "There's this guy. He needs a studio space. Like, please talk to him." And I was able to meet one of the people, and she invited me in for basically an interview, and I brought in like a stack of 18 by 24-inch paper paintings and drawings that I had made in this park. And then yeah, I was able to get that studio space, which is the like huge game changer. But that was like definitely a win. And then I remember I opened my studio up to the public for I think it was just like every Sunday it opens up, and um, the first people who came in to my studio ever, they bought two paintings. It was two girls. They bought two paintings, um, and that was, I think, that was the first paintings I ever sold, and that was definitely a win. And I was like, all right, let's go.
Yeah, yeah.
And they were like small paintings for a couple $100, but it was validation for sure. But I think at that point, like, I did not need that external validation, and right now I don't need external validation, because, like, if anything, it was like I was happy. I was like, all right, fine, connecting, all according to the plan. Because it was what I was working for, pretty much every day at that time.
Yeah. Can you talk to us a little bit about, your art process? I saw, several different series that you've done, like the Stardust, the Disrupted, the Graduation. Um, do you go into it like knowing, like wanting a theme or things like that? Or I mean, even today, like how do you approach
Mhm.
making the art that you make?
I mean, I never go into it with an idea or an inclination towards creating something specific. And the times where I've tried that, it just did not come out good at all. But I feel like my job with every piece of art I make, whether it's a painting, a sculpture, a video, um, like a computer program, a dance choreography, a building in my Minecraft world, which we can get into. Um, uh, it's just like I have to just get out of my own way, just lose my conscious intentionality and just be intentional about being unintentional, and just letting my subconscious kind of just translate a canvas into something that it deems to be expression. And that's the goal for me. It's just expression, just raw expression, um, just being as real as possible in that moment, and like just taking a snapshot of my mood, my ideas, and my mind in that moment. And you can, like, if you see the progression of my work, like, you can see how different ideas evolve, or there's like some characters that continue to pop up in my pieces and whatnot. But yeah, just intention, like, just expression is it.
Can you talk to us about, March of 2021? I think you quit your job February of 2021. What was that moment where you were like, all right, I'm going to go all in? How did you make that decision? Had you saved up, a little bit of money, or how did you make that decision in March of 2021?
Um, so I was so by then I had already been selling, kind of consistently. Making, and I eventually started making the same amount that I was making at work. And then I think in February, or no, in January, it was twice as much as I was making with my job, and then in February, I think it was either twice or three times as much. Um, and then that plus GameStop and that whole fiasco,
Yeah.
that whole fiasco.
Shout out to GameStop.
Yeah, shout out to GameStop. Um, Not financial advice. Uh, that that like made me feel comfortable with making the decision, but it was still a very difficult decision, because I wasn't just quitting from that company. I was leaving like a whole chapter of my life behind, and evolving. Was
Yep.
tough, but I'm obviously super grateful I made that jump. And then I think a couple days after I made that jump, I ended up selling like my biggest painting that I sold at the time. It was a huge, I think it was like 6 by 8 feet. It was this painting that I did the day after the election, titled "Sore Loser," and it's a fire piece. And this guy bought that one as well as another election series painting that I did that was, I think, 4 by 6 feet. So yeah, he definitely got some great pieces, and that was the universe validating the decision I made. And then I just went into isolation for like 3 weeks and worked on another series, which is the recalibration series on my website. Um, and yeah, honestly, March, April, and May were really tough. I saw like a fairly steep decline in sales. Um, I felt like I was trying to make products as opposed to trying to authentically express. Um, and those months were really tough, and there were for sure moments where it was like, you know, let's just say I remember there's this story of Kanye going into like millions of dollars of debt to create Yeezy, and now he's a
Mm.
billionaire. Like it was definitely a challenging time, and uh yeah, but that's around the time when the little donkey situation happened. I don't know if you're familiar.
No,
uh,
no.
so I got this random DM um this one evening from the manager of this restaurant.
Oh, oh, the barriers.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So
yeah.
the
Awesome.
manager of this restaurant
Yeah.
in Central Square in Cambridge, called Little Donkey, and she was like, "Hey, so we ordered 16 safety barriers for a restaurant, and they were supposed to be translucent. Like they were supposed to be, is that the right word? Translucent, like you can see through them."
Yeah, yeah.
So she was like, they were supposed to be translucent, but they came opaque. So it just looks like the whole restaurant's a cubicle. Like,
Yeah.
and she was like, would you be interested in painting on them? Um, and I just quit my job. So in my mind, I was like, all right, I need money. How do I make money? Selling artwork on canvas. So I like was thinking through that framework, and I was like, okay, um, how would I price out these barriers? Well, they're pretty high quote, which was ridiculous. And she said no. So I was like, all right, like that's not gonna happen. That's okay. Keep moving. And then I told my girlfriend Katie about it. I was like, yeah, so this restaurant reached out to me today. They want me to paint their barriers. She's like, oh, which restaurant? It's really cool. And I was like, Little Donkey. And she was like, oh my gosh, when are you doing it? I was like, oh, I'm not gonna do it. She was like, you need to do that. You have to do that. Make that happen. And I was like, all right, that. Um, so I went back to the manager at the restaurant and changed the price, and then we made it happen. Went there the next day, um, and I met with the owners of the restaurant, and they kind of gave me a sense of what they were looking for. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna go to Graffiti Alley, which is like a couple blocks away, which is like, I don't know if you're familiar. It's like um, a wall where you can legally spray paint.
Mm.
Um, in Central Square, which is so fun.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm gonna go to Central Square. I'm gonna make a couple different options, or I'm gonna go to Graffiti Alley, make a couple different options, and then I'll come show you when it's done. So I went over there, spray painted them, which is like the coolest job interview I've ever had for sure. Spray painted them, and I went back, and they liked it, and I was like, so back to do the barriers, and the owner was like, you got time right now? And I was like, sure. I did not have painting attire on. I was just, going in for a 15-20 minute meeting. And I ended up being there for like 8-10 hours or so, just behind the restaurant, just bumping Travis Scott and just spray painting all day. And yeah, I finished them in 2 days. And then that led to another restaurant, which led to another restaurant, which led to other barriers, which led to the Boston Globe article. And then it was, um, since then, things have definitely been good, especially since the Beverly Hills in July, like, which, you know, came from the Globe article, which came from Lil Donkey, and, you know, so it's all connected.
Yeah. I saw you represented by Gallery Michael.
Yeah.
How did you go about getting that to happen?
Um, so for me, gallery represents was going to happen. Like I knew that was going to happen, and I knew that I wanted it to happen, but I was like waiting for it to be the right partnership. And I was approached prior by a couple of galleries in New York and in Boston here, um, but I was like, all right, I'm gonna wait for the right partnership, and um, I went to Los Angeles in July with Katie, and um, I think day one we went to Beverly Hills because I was like, all right, let's go do some bougie shit first. And we went to Beverly Hills strictly to window shop. And when we got there, first place we went to was that gallery, which is like right up uh, that it's on Rodeo Drive, but right up that hill where there's a statue and right across from Versace. Um, and we just walked in and started we started chatting with the head of sales there, and we got to talking about Boston. He lived in Boston for a little bit, and our studios are in Boston. Oh, you're an artist? Like, wow. Well, let me see some stuff. So I just like pulled up my phone, like showed him like my Instagram, and he's like, cool. Um, and then I think it was the next day. I was I went to the Broad Museum in downtown LA, which is I think my favorite museum in the world. Um, and I was, you know, enjoying those artworks and just eyes of that one huge skull painting that Basquiat had made. And I got a call from him, and he basically asked me, or he said, "Love your work, love your story. We would love to like meet with you. Do you have any paintings with you?" And so I was like, "No, you know, this is like day 2 or 3 of my vacation. I don't." Um, but scheduled a meeting for the next day, and after the Broad, went straight to an art store, picked up some canvases, picked up some spray, some oil, some pastels, and just went to Santa Monica Beach and was just painting on the beach. And went into the gallery meeting with them the next day, showed them the piece, told them my story, and um, and I met with the whole team. It was crazy, you know. Honestly, it was super wild. Um, just like talk about validation, you know. Um, but I wasn't expecting validation like that, and until like maybe next year or something. But because like I was surrounded, like in this gallery, I'm surrounded by Picasso, Dali, Moreau, Matisse, like the people who I am inspired by. So to even have discussions about, excuse me, to even have discussions about potentially being um, up on the wall next to them was wild. And I remember I had a gallery meeting in Boston with this gallery that sells similar artists like Picasso, Matisse, Rembrandt, and they'd asked me like, "Do you see?" This was in November of 2020. They're like, "Do you see yourself hanging up like, on the walls next to these artists?" And I was like, "Maybe not right now, but give me a month." You know, that was it took a little longer than a month, but I'll settle for 8 months for sure. And yeah, so they ended up Galerie Michael ended up representing her. Like I had given them that painting that I made while I was over there, and I also made this other painting out of acrylic, pencil, pastel, and some like candle wax that was just like in front of me. There's this candle, I like blew it out and like poured some on the paper. Um, So I brought those into them, and they actually sold them like one of the first days that they're on the wall, which was crazy. And then they asked for more work, and I sent over 11 pieces. And I think at this point they might have sold 7 or 8 of those 11, which is wild. And um, like a couple hours ago, I shipped out 3 more larger pieces this time, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's been crazy.
No, that's awesome. Uh, I guess for you, you know, especially since you've gone full time, do you love it every day, or does it sometimes feel like work?
Um, I mean, there's aspects of it that feel like work for sure, like shipping stuff, like the administrative stuff. Um, like, oh my gosh, you should see my studio right now. There's boxes and bubble wrap and fans and tape, so much tape. And it's just like spend so much time shipping. And in the future, that won't be something that I'll be doing. I'll have a team that can help me out with that. But right now, I'm at the point in my art career where it's like I'm doing everything.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's trying to balance time. And but that being said, like I love it. I wake up every day just loving what I do and feeling like I can do what I want, when I want, how I want. Um, and I wouldn't want it any other way. Um, yeah.
yeah. How do you manage the creative aspect and the business aspect of, like, being on top of your things, like, because I feel like those are two different aspects, in terms of like you're truly expressing your art versus, being on top of your marketing, doing interviews, like, and messaging, people at different galleries or whatever you're doing in your, quote unquote business. How have you balanced those two elements? Do you set aside time for each, or how do you do that?
In the past, I've like blocked out time. I've used things like the tomato timer, and like I've had goals of like what I want to accomplish at this hour, this day, this week. And I just think that way of thinking is unnatural. Like I in the same way that I try to get out of my own way with each painting and just let myself authentically express, I do that with like everything in my life. Um, like like in order to keep painting, I need to sell paintings. In order to sell paintings, I need to be DMing people on Instagram all day long, all night long, emailing people, like liking certain photos at specific times, and in order to do that, I need to be of a good mindset to do that. So in order to be of a good mindset, I need to take care of my body, take care of my sleep. So it's all like connected, and I just let myself adapt to the situations and the environments, and without being too firm in how old processes were working.
Yeah. I'm curious. I'm sure I don't know if this has been your experience, but I'm sure there's been experience where you've thought like, man, this painting is fire. And then maybe the reaction isn't great, and then you're like, oh, this painting's okay. And then the reaction's fire. Like, how do you balance out thinking about the commercial, ness of said painting, and also just being your individual creative self and not worrying about that?
I mean, that's a good question. First of all, on one hand, like the great thing about visual, or the great thing about art in general, is that it's so subjective. So if you don't like my paintings, like, cool, like that's fine. I'm sure there's other artists who you do like. Um, so like I that like disinterest in my work, whether that's like quiet or whether that's vocalized, it does not affect me. Um, what does hurt though is when like you sell a painting or do a barrier and um or like they like I've had one of my barriers covered up like a couple days after I made it, and that was whack. That
Mm.
was whack. I got heated from that. That was
Yeah.
yeah. So that was definitely odd, and that one was close to home too. It was like right down the block from where I was living, and I would see the restaurant owner every day. So that was interesting.
Yeah.
A lot of beef, but um, but you just I always say that no matter what it is, whether it's like a single dot in the middle of the canvas or like a realistic, like there's someone out there who needs your painting, and it's just your job to find them. And now you can with Instagram, with the internet, with Reddit, with Twitter, like you can find them and you can connect them with your idea. Um, and I have this theory that in order to sell my paintings, I need to like just be as me as possible and as loudly as possible everywhere all the time. And um, if I do that to the like to the upper, no matter what it is. I mean, you look at like these Basquiat drawings or Picasso drawings that are like a single squiggle and it's signed and like boom, sells. And like that's what I'm working for every day. I feel like a CEO of my own company where my main job is to just grow shareholder value. And like everyone who's collected my work, like that's what I'm out here doing. And that's what I'm working for. Just the idea that like I'm like building a currency really, and people who connect with my work ideas and people who connect with my ideas, they connect with my values. And then I'm just like lifting the net worth of these like-minded beings. And like to me, that's beautiful. I really like that, the
Yeah.
aspect.
Yeah. I'm curious, you seem like you're very dedicated to your craft. I'm curious, you know, um you mentioned you have a girlfriend, but I mean obviously you have family as well. How do you balance, your professional, desires and also make sure that, your personal life is going well too?
Mhm. Um, it's a challenge for sure, especially considering that creating art is an obsession of mine, and I'm just always have been a workaholic. Um, but I think last night I was watching this masterclass by the artist and stage designer S. Devlin, and she said when it comes to balancing work and life, like some days you're gonna win in work and you're gonna fail in life, and some days you're gonna win in life and fail in work, and it's okay. It's okay to bounce back and forth between those wins and losses, but like the zoomed out macro version of that is overall growth. Um, and like it goes back to just being okay with failing. I'm okay with that, and yeah, the people around me, like they understand that passion of mine, and they understand that like we'll be talking and I'll just like grab a napkin and just like start drawing just because I
Yeah.
feel like I need to, and if I don't I'll be super like just uncomfortable. um and the cool thing about being a full-time artist is that because I have family like around the states and around the world, is that I can like just go and visit them and make art while I'm there, make art on the way to there, you know, and then just post it, and that's me working.
Are you able to, and I guess, do you want to ever be able to like turn it off? Like, you know, just go on a vacation and not even think about, your art or about art in general? Like, do you want that in your life, or do you just enjoy the fact that you're sort of always on?
Um, I mean, I enjoy that. Like, I'm sure some people close to me don't enjoy that, but yeah, like you said, I'm always on. I'm always have this energy to express and express loudly, and I wouldn't want it any other way. That being said, I do have a method and like uh, I guess a guilty pleasure to not necessarily turn off, but to just kind of like reorient my mind in a new way. And it's Minecraft. Honestly, it's I've been working on this Minecraft world for the past 8+ years, and um, this sounds crazy, and I know it is, but I spend more time in that world than I do in
Yeah.
reality, honestly. And like I play pretty much all night, and I just have these cities, and like I've been like it started off as something like just to just mess around, build a building here, build a building there, but over time I formed cities, and I formed like different like activities within the cities, and then I formed a currency in the game. And basically over the past 8 years I've used my Minecraft world as a simulation tool to like to just test out different ideas in like this simulated market, uh, that is just like like if we want to go and do something right now, you have to plan for it. You got to like call an Uber, you got to reserve some. But in Minecraft I can just like fly that way and just build that
Yeah.
idea and manifest it. And just the concept of like immediately manifesting an idea to me is something that's super important. And through Minecraft I feel like I've been able um, to do that and to simulate things, and in a way where I like in my Minecraft world, I'll like develop basically just play make believe. And I know that's wild, but like honestly, like
Yeah.
that's what I do. And, I'll just like make a character who makes a certain type of art, and I'll make art in the game and test it out in this city, and get gallery representation, and like the gallery representation, the gallery has currency, and they transact, and like I try to be as objective as possible with it and as realistic as possible with it. um, and then my mind just gets used to that, such that when I then go out into reality,
Mm.
I'm already doing that just like in a game form, but then I'm just like more like just doing that with people. And honestly, like that Gallery Michael situation, like I definitely manifested and simulated that like the weeks before that whole thing went down. And to me that's still always so wild to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. How do you look at the future? Do you put expectations on it, or are you staying in the present and in your process, or how do you approach the future for you?
I used to set goals and be super specific about what I wanted to achieve. And to a degree, I still do that now. But um, honestly, I think goals can be limiting, because we think of goals within the framework of like what we see as normal every day. Um, like, for example, um, like say my goal was to go to the moon, and I spent my whole life working on going to the moon. But by the time I got to the spot where I was able, what if I was able to go like to Pluto or something?
Yep.
Yet I worked for the moon, and now I'm missing out on this like 10 times better experience. So for me, it's less about specific goals and more about how can I be my best self in every single moment, which is impossible. But how can I approach that upper limit? And if every moment, every day, every week, I am doing the best that I can be, if I'm doing the best that I can to be the best person I can be, then things will be okay and things will be good.
Yeah. I'm curious, Joe, do you have any advice for, anyone starting out on, obviously there's a lot of people that'll listen to this and they want to get to your level, whether that's gallery representation, whether that's doing it full time, whatever it is that they see that you're doing. Um, do you have any advice for them on, what you would recommend as they're starting out their process?
Um, just make as much as possible, like, and don't stick to just painting. If you want to be a painter, don't stick to just painting. Try drawing, try using crayons, try using a highlighter. Like, only have a piece of paper and a highlighter and see what you make. Um, and even sculpture, dance, like, just try everything, because it all is connected and will all bring your own style forward. Um, and that's if you want to create like an own style. If you want to, like, if you're interested in like painting more representational things like landscapes and people, even, like, of course there's some degree of training that you have to do, and certain materials are better than others. But I mean, my way is like, give me two sticky notes, plastic cup, and a glue stick, and, like, let's see what happens, and it will be valid. um yeah, and so
Yep.
create as much as possible, and just, like, be bold, be loud, share your stuff with others without this feeling of what will they think, like, oh no, are they going to judge it? Because they will judge it. And if you go into that with the expectation that they're going to judge it, and if you go into it knowing that no matter what, your work is subjective, and, like, there's no right or wrong answers, then it's going to be fine. And for me, like, that's also why I don't like, or in the past I didn't like painting things that were realistic. It's because it had like something to compare it to.
Mm.
So there was a little bit more objectivity and things of that nature. But yeah, I just say make as much as possible, share as much as possible, and just don't be afraid to just get out there and be as loud as possible. There's not, like, everyone has their own path, everyone has their own ambitions, and everyone has their own things that they're dealing with. Just, just do you, and there's not enough time to not just do you.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. Joe, we talked about a good amount. Is there something you always wish people asked you, or obviously, is there anything that you would like to, yourself, just it's on your mind or talk about, or if you think in the minds of the people buying from you that want to know more about you, is there anything that comes to mind that you want to talk about?
um yeah, actually, and we talked about simulation a little bit with the whole Minecraft rant. But um I wrote this essay in, I think it was in 2018, when I had first started working at Temi. For some reason, I felt compelled to write down this theory that I had, and it was called the simulatory. Um, I think it's just like this simulatory mind, or like this process of, or it was a theory that organisms, not just humans, like all organisms, have a capacity to simulate the future, and then based on those potential outcomes, to create an outcome that they deem to be leading towards the most like evolutionary fitness, right? This is something that um, I think exists on a spectrum for people. Like, some people are able to, like, better simulate potential situations, and then use those simulations um, to then like choose a good decision to move forward. um, but I think it also exists in like the micro of how I work. Like like I said, I get out of my own like head and I just let my hands react to what's on the canvas. But really, like what I'm doing, I think in that process is, you know, I'll make a mark, and then my mind is just like rapidly simulating like what should come next, and then before I can even think, it's just like doing that. Um, and I feel like there's something there that I'm still exploring, and um, you know, I think time is just this interesting thing that we know so little about, and you know, I do believe it's possible to see the future, because if you can simulate these different potential outcomes and then act on that, like you're basically using the future into your advantage. Um, and yeah, I mean, that's definitely a like I'm always thinking about different like aspects of the mind, and I guess um, one thing about me is like I never want to be boxed in as just like a painter, you know.
Mm.
Painting is one of my mechanisms to express. Like I produce music. I've made some fashion items. Like I still like will program robot applications and like write stuff and sing from time to time. I was on a dance team at BC, you know, like,
Mhm.
and I think everyone is in this way where everyone is capable of doing so many things, and but so much in life is that paint by numbers, where it's telling you, okay, number one is red. You need to put red here. You need to do this now. You need to do this then. No, you can't do that there. But like really what we are is that paint by numbers on the lamp. We are those unique brush strokes that really like I feel like everyone should lean into more, and I think that I hope that society over time morphs into an entity that is able to accommodate for that way of being, because I think that that's natural. um, but yeah, and
Yeah.
I guess one other thing I did want to mention is I'm working on this book. So it's my first book. I think, who knows? I'd probably
Yeah. Yeah.
honestly, I probably made one when I was young and just like forgot about it. Um, so it's my first real book, uh, basically with I think somewhere it's like over 150 paintings that I made in the past like year and a half, just outlining my progression. um, and yeah, it's been a struggle to make it. It's so much work, and I think it's at like 200 pages right now. I'm trying to get like published real nice, like hardcover,
Yeah.
limited edition, numbered. Each one has a unique drawing in it. um, and yeah, it's I'm excited to show people, because like so many of my collectors, like they'll have one or a couple of my pieces, but I don't think they like truly know the breadth of my work, just because my studio is like the walls are always filled, but like things sell fairly quickly and I make work faster, so it's like it's always changing, and no one has really gone to see everything, and this is
Mhm.
not everything. This is
Mm.
like 40% of everything, but um I'm excited to see how people react to that. But that, stay tuned, that's coming out soon for sure.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I really liked what you said earlier about, you know, putting limits on yourself can hurt us as a society, and that's a great point. And yeah, congrats on the book.
Thank you.
Um, for anyone that wants to support you or, you know, learn more about you or see your artwork, in a gallery or in your studio, do you want to maybe tell them how they can do all those things?
Yeah, totally. So I post most of my work online at on Instagram at my Instagram, which is robojobot. That's ROBOJOEBOT. for some behind the scenes information, updates about new things that are going down. And then if you want to see my work in person, the best places to go if you're in Boston are in my studio in the SoHo Arts District, which unfortunately I do have to move my studio from there at the end of this month. So that won't be a thing for long, but I'll be getting a new studio. So definitely like sign up for the mailing list to learn where that is. And if you're in LA, definitely go through to get. I've been sending a whole lot of pieces, and they're right there on the walls. So I still have to go out to LA to see them. So I haven't been since I sent everything.
Yeah.
So,
Well, Joe, just want to acknowledge you and just say, it's just an amazing story, and you're an incredible individual. I think so many of us are, as we talked about, limited by, if we haven't done something since we're 5, we're not going to, pick it up or start it, even if it's just a hobby. And, for you to, obviously you had creative outlets prior to March of 2020, but for you to then, go and, be willing to produce okay work or whatever you would describe it as, learn, sort of fail and then, get to the point a year later. I mean, that's insane that a year later you're doing this full time. I don't know if you've been able to wrap your head around that, but people do, you know, art for like 10 years and on the side and still can't get it to that point. So for you to be able to do that, that's awesome. And I just love mentally, just your philosophy and your thoughts on just pushing yourself and not um setting limitations on goals or whatnot is terrific. And best of luck going forward. And yeah, hope to see you soon.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for having me. It was definitely a great talk.
Awesome, thank you.